There are more than 1,200 bills filed in the Indiana General Assembly this legislative session. That's far more than will make it into law by the end of April. Now, among those filings, Republican and Democratic leaders in the House and Senate have pointed to measures that they see as priority legislation, in addition to the overall work of lawmakers to prepare and pass a new two-year state budget. And to that end, Governor Mike Braun introduced his budget plans ahead of his first State of the State address. You can see that one next Wednesday night at 7 here on PBS Fort Wayne. So with 2 weeks in and more than 3 months to go, we'll talk about bills on the legislative to-do list with our guests on this week's Primetime. And good evening, I'm Bruce Haines. With us today, our 19th District Republican State Senator and Majority Caucus Chair Travis Holdman, and 82nd District Democratic State Representative Kyle Miller. And as always, we invite you to join the conversation. You do that simply by calling in your question or comment by using the number right there on the screen. As we say Happy New Year, you can still say that, I'm told.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you. I don't know when we quit saying Happy New Year.
Another week or so.
No, another
okay.
week. Then it's
Okay.
Groundhog's Day. I think.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Travis Holdman, Kyle Miller, gentlemen, thank you. How have the first two-ish weeks been for each of you in the session so far?
Well, we jumped right in quickly and started hearing bills the first week, and we've probably passed out 25 to 30 bills already on third reading in the Senate.
Wow. How about on the House side?
We're taking it a little bit slower on the House side. We changed up our calendar a bit this year and have spent more time in committees and trying to work on bills and less time in session. So as Travis and I were talking about before we came on, it's going to increase our workload going forward because the Senate's been doing their work in the Senate chamber, and now we have to catch up and get all of our bills through. So.
This has been an expositional period. You know, we have House and Senate leaders each sharing their caucus's agendas, and the governor bringing, like a carry-in dinner, everybody's bringing in their ideas, forward to see what can be made of them. Kyle, let me start with you on this one, though. What's the focus for you and the Indiana House Democrats this session?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously it's a budget year. We want to see what's going to make it into the budget. Obviously, a budget is as we see it, a moral document, what we want to spend our money on, what we think is important as a state. And as you were alluding to, the Senate has their ideas on what they find important. We in the House have our bills, and of course the governor has his say too. So this year, House Democrats are really just focused on some common sense things to make sure that we're taking care of people, whether that's lowering health care costs, child care access, just things that we think that people, when they're sitting down to dinner at night, are talking about, care about, and trying to move ahead on those things.
Mm-hmm. And as Majority Caucus Chair, Travis, on the Senate side, what are some of the top 3 to 5 even topic areas as opposed to?
Well, property tax is taken front and center with Senate Bill 1, which is in my file to handle. We have our own budget that we're crafting. Taking a look at what we can do with K-12 education funding, Medicaid funding, and then a lot of the traditional programs that we've been able to fund in really good years. We're going to have a challenge this year with the revenue forecast that came out in December. We were looking at just a 3% growth in the first year of the biennium and a 0.3% growth in the second year of the biennium. And so it's going to be very tight for us. We get a revenue forecast coming up about mid-April, which we'll see, that will basically signal to us how we put the final touches on the budget that comes over from the House. But we get together with the House folks and make a decision on where we go from there. But hopefully things will look a little better in April than they did in December.
Before we got to January, you were quoted at one point to say that you expected to see a whole plethora of bills dealing with the property tax to be filed this year. And I was just kind of wondering going into the show if the plethora has arrived.
Yes, it has.
How much is stuff? You have a number. I counted more than 10 for which carried your name alone as either author or co-author, and I'm sure it's more than that.
Well, I'm second author on many bills because I chair the Tax and Fiscal Policy Committee, and that's one way you try to get your bill heard is you put the chairman of the committee as second author on the bill so that they think you own the bill. Our priority bill was Senate Bill 1, which is the Governor Brown's property tax reform bill. And then we have Senate Bill 6, 7, 8, and 9, which all have to do with property tax, which are the top 10, some of the top 10 bills that we've got in the Senate that we're pushing for.
You did a wonderful tour, if you will, of some of those priority pieces that all kind of complement or connect with SB1. If you could share some of those with us too. There's some of them are rolling out next week, I understand, like Senate Bill 6, 7, 8, 9. Feel free to pick a number and go from there.
6 is one of my favorite ones. We copied language from other states that have done this, and it's called the Property Tax Deferment Program. It's purely optional for local units of government, which a county council would make a decision if they want to do a deferment program or not. And they can pick what classification or qualified group they want to note, whether it's over 65, veterans, low income, children in the household. They can pick any qualification that they want, where they would be able, the taxpayer would then be able to defer from $100 up to $500 of their tax bill on an annual basis. There'd be a $10,000 cap, so if you took the $500 deferment on an annual basis, you would be able to defer $500 for 20 years. The catch is, and it's not a catch, it just makes sense, that if you sign that deferral agreement with the county, that becomes a lien against your property. So eventually the lien has to be satisfied, and that would carry a 3% interest rate on it. So a $500 deferment off of a $1,500 tax bill is a significant savings for the taxpayer. But when that property changes hands, when it moves from the individual to their trust, or it moves from the individual to another buyer, or it moves from the individual through their estate, then that lien comes due just like other taxes do. We've copied Colorado's language somewhat. This is where we got the idea when I attended a fiscal leaders meeting in Charlotte, North Carolina, about 6 months ago. I was made aware of that program, and we've researched other states that have done it. There's about 4 or 5 states that have put a deferment program in place, and we're intrigued by the concept.
There have been, we were talking about sort of this carry-in of ideas. It seems that within SB1, it is also a functioning collective of input to try to see what matches with the governor's 4 pillars, where things can be maybe added onto later, or using the session's time to perhaps refine a final plan that comes out and with dried ink and everything.
We're looking forward to working with the governor. I had a meeting with the governor this week to talk about Senate Bill 1 and also to talk about Senate Bills 6, 7, 8, and 9. Which he likes those ideas. The other piece that I introduced, and it'll be on third reading calendar coming up this week, is a reduction in the individual income tax rate. If we meet 3% year-over-year revenue growth starting in 2030, after we've ratcheted down our individual rate to 2.9% in 27, if we meet that trigger of 3% revenue growth in 3030, then folks would receive a 0.05 reduction in every even numbered year after that, as long as we maintain a 3% year-over-year growth.
I remember, as you do as well, there was the focus on the individual income tax rate 2 years ago. And then as ideas evolve and circumstances develop and so forth, the income tax was replaced by the focus to property tax, if I have that right. But then still this rate, the idea of at some point maybe Indiana could explore, the hypothesis was maybe Indiana doesn't need an income tax, but there would be other ways to be identified to fund government or fill in the missing parts.
Well, it's an $8 billion hole of individual income tax that we receive in revenue on an annual basis, and so it's going to be tough for us to eliminate individual income tax. But I think we make a statement that the default is we reduce the individual income tax every other year for as long as we possibly can. I had a reporter ask me if we were ever going to get to zero, and I said, well, maybe in 40 years we may, but it's not going to happen while I'm a legislator, I don't think, and maybe even not while Representative Miller's a legislator, but hopefully we get there. But the focus changed from the majority caucus in the Senate because those tax bills went out 2 years ago, and people were seeing 15, 20, 30% increase in property taxes and assessed value. So our focus changed because the focus of our constituency changed, and that's what we just responded to what our taxpayers were saying to us.
Yeah. Well, in conversations, Kyle, that you've had within your district and with colleagues, that idea, of course, that you can't just push one button without another button coming this way, to find the sweet spot, if you will.
That's right.
What have you been hearing along the journey with this?
Yeah, well, Senator Holdman mentioned the plethora of bills filed on this particular topic, and I think that's the exact reason why. Is it's, we can all agree that property taxes are too high. They've skyrocketed the past few years, but there's so many levers involved. We don't want to just automatically lower property taxes and then underfund or defund our police or our schools or our libraries. These are essential services that people need, and so I think the number of bills on this issue, and I appreciate Travis's work on his task force and just in general looking at the way we do taxes in Indiana. The number of bills on this speaks to the fact that this is a very delicate balance that we're trying to really move the needle forward. We've gotten past campaign season where it's an easy thing to say we need to lower property taxes, and now it's time to actually figure out how to do that, and that's easier said than done.
I did notice, too, within the legislation, Travis, something new coming to a computer near me, the idea of a property tax transparency portal.
We'll see what that looks like.
Okie dokie.
That's
I told you it was new.
that's beyond my skill level. I think what the governor is wanting to do, and several of us want this to happen. I just don't know how it's going to happen. But something that's a little more customer friendly for the taxpayers, so they can go online, calculate what they think their property tax bill is going to look like based upon their assessed value. And be a little more interactive with the system than waiting until you get that tax bill on tax day, which those will be mailed out probably the 1st of April, early April. And it's a big surprise to everybody to open that envelope and see what it looks like. And I'll just tell folks right now that the statewide average for tax increase is 7%, which is a statewide average. That means some will be lower, some will be higher, but the statewide average is 7% for 25. And there is nothing that we can do in this session that the House or the Senate, Republicans or Democrats, can do in this session that we're currently in that's going to affect the 25 tax bills that you're going to get in just 6 to 8 weeks. That is already baked in because those budgets for local government, where all property tax goes, the state takes no property tax whatsoever. It's all local government. Those budgets were baked in last August, September, when those were approved by City Council, County Council, Town Board, school districts. All of those were baked in, and so that's what you're going to see here in just a few weeks coming up with those tax bills.
Got it. We are speaking live in studio this evening with State Senator Travis Holdman, State Representative Kyle Miller here on Primetime. If you have a question or comment, you see the phone number there. Please join us as you're inspired to do so. One of the things that we want to get to are the number and the breadth of bills that you're connected with in going into this session. Everything from esports industry development studies to something else I'm learning to pronounce, which is earned wage access services.
Yes.
Let's start with that one.
Earned wage access is this really interesting concept where it's just kind of baked into our society that you work every day, but you get paid every 2 weeks, or in some case every week. And so there's a group of technology entrepreneurs that say, you've worked that day, you should have access to those wages. And so there's been a rise of apps on your phone that will allow you to access the wages that you've earned before payday. I see it really as a sort of an antidote to traditional payday lending, where you're stuck in a cycle of debt. It's high fees. With these apps, there's no interest, there's no fees to withdraw. There's like a small $4 fee maybe to make each withdrawal. If there's no credit reporting or no credit pulls to access the funds, and if you get to payday and can't pay back that loan, then the only thing that happens to you is you lose access to the app. You can't borrow any more money. So it literally can't keep you in that cycle of debt. It's a really good offering for Hoosiers that are struggling, that just need something to get by, maybe take their kid out for a birthday dinner, or get by with an appliance repair until payday or something like that. And so it's a really interesting concept, but it's kind of a niche product. So that's something that we're looking at. We'll look at next week in financial institutions.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, and in the same vein, esports industry, we think we know what it is. We could see something in it, but my image is fuzzy. Help me fine-tune this.
Well, it's about like AI, where we haven't fully explored the concept yet. And we actually have a really good esports team at Indiana Tech here in Fort Wayne. And so, it sounds like a bunch of people just getting together and playing video games, but these are actually legitimately professional athletes that are competing in big arenas on these video games. And so, we're wanting to be on the forefront of a lot of this new technology, whether it's earned wage access or AI. This is another form of that. So we just want to have state government sort of look into what are ways we could be a leader in esports? What are ways we could attract esports teams? How do they fit within our economy? And kind of explore the boundaries of that industry.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
You're seeing some of this on the, it's a variation on a theme with professional golf, with a lot of folks who are playing the great outdoors indoors.
Yes.
Very, very interesting. Other industries that are also moving cogs, there is a tax credit bill for film and media production. It's one of two tax credit legislation pieces that you are authoring.
Second author.
Second author. First, it's a whole. Justin Bush is connected to that,
That's
and
right.
so
That's
Nancy
right.
Say on this one.
Justin Bush and I have worked closely on this, and Justin has done a great job. Senator Bush has done a great job of promoting the tax credit program for film and media industry. Huntington University, one of our own universities very close to us, was there this week when we heard the bill that Senator Zay is carrying on film and media tax credits, and pretty exciting what we could do. We had a lot of work on this project back 10, 15 years ago, and we just didn't think, some of the fiscal leaders just didn't think that it was really going to work out, that it was the squeeze was going to be worth the juice we were going to get out of it. And so we are taking another stab at it, and we're really pleased with what's going on in Huntington University. And I think it's something we need to take a look at. Georgia did this about 20 years ago, and it's really paid off for Georgia. So other states have done this, and we think we have a lot of industry in Indiana that's doing a lot of filming. The production studios are not in Indiana, though. The executives work here, but they go to Illinois or Ohio or Michigan to do the filming because they get tax credits if they do that. We'd like to bring that industry home to Indiana.
Well, let me ask you, while we have this moment too, beyond bills that you are personally connected with, are there others in that group or others of your peers that have been filed that you're going to be watching this session to see what movement there is on a particular topic or measure? Kyle, start with you.
That's a great question. It's as you mentioned, there are over 1,200 bills. I think it's closer to 1,800 that have been filed this year.
They lost count after 1,200.
Yes, and so it's very the public at large, we hear a lot about the bills that have been filed, and I have to kind of walk people through the process. And certain bills are just not going to move. Certain bills aren't going anywhere. They're dead on arrival, and so it's really, we're at an interesting. I know this isn't directly answering your question, but we're at an interesting point in session where, on the House side anyway, the Senate is moving forward, but where we're not quite sure what's going to move yet. What's moving, what's not moving, what's making it through committee, what looks like it may not have a chance to get out of committee. And so I'm focused on, I serve on public policy, financial institutions, and commerce, small business, and economic development in the House. And so I'm mainly focused on the bills that are coming through those committees, making sure that they're the best they can be, or bringing up some issues with the individual bills. We're going to talk a lot about gaming in public policy this year, not only with the proposed New Haven casino, but potentially iGaming as well. And so it'll be a really interesting conversation around gaming in public policy. I'd say that's probably one of the things I'm looking forward to most, is just kind of having that debate and figuring out where everybody stands.
Yeah. Travis, how about you, sir? Other topics or bills you're keeping an eye on?
Well, one bill I'm following closely is the business personal property tax bill. Another boring tax bill. We have a 30% floor for business personal property tax. An individual business owner who has a piece of equipment, for instance, or a farmer who has a tractor that they bought 30 years ago, they pay tax on that locally for business personal property, and that's reduced each year along with the depreciation schedule. But when that gets down to 30% of its acquisition value, it stays at that level, and they continue to pay property tax, business personal property tax, on that 30% floor, regardless of the age of that piece of equipment.
Okay.
There's a movement afoot to remove or to rid ourselves of that 30% floor. We have a bill that takes the 30% floor down over 3 years, over a 3-year period, so that when you buy a new piece of business personal property, it depreciates out, and you pay it down, and it falls off of the tax record. The good thing about that bill is it allows for business owners to buy new equipment, to put that new equipment back on the tax roll for 5, 7, or 10 years, depending upon the depreciation schedule. So it's not a bad thing that we are taking that tax away from local units of government, which is about $170 million statewide. But at the same time, there will be adding new equipment to put that back on the tax roll, so that the tax roll has a benefit of eliminating that 30% floor and replace it with something new, which could be the benefit to local government.
Yeah. When you were both sharing how this is, again, kind of the let's see what all is possible and then how much of it becomes probable, we've all been following the notion of picking up some extra citizens from Illinois. The lawmakers are involved in a bill here that would apparently pave the way to redraw the boundary between Indiana and Illinois, and take in hundreds of thousands of folks who would like to be Hoosiers instead of Illini.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept. It was filed by the speaker, but it's one of those things that was filed to make a point, filed to get some media attention. So I don't see it going much further than that. I mean, we may be starting some of these conversations, but the legal maneuvering, and even, I mean, assuming we would pass it this year, the soonest that those counties could be a part of Indiana is like 2030 something. So we're a ways off from that. Like I said, it's not something that I'm heavily focused on. It's just kind of making a point, and we'll see what discussion happens.
Right. Let me very quickly, you each have about 45 seconds on this one, but I'm interested in what you see what happens when Governor Mike Braun delivers his first State of the State address. That will be next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock here on PBS Fort Wayne. What are you hoping to hear in his remarks?
I'm interested in hearing his budget proposal, what he's going to do with Medicaid, what he wants to do with K-12 schools. I think it's going to be interesting to hear what he wants to do with economic development in the state. We've grown accustomed to having a fairly large budget for economic development and regional development as well. And it's going to be interesting to see if we're going to take on that mantle of pushing those dollars out to the state, around the state for regional projects, which I'm very, very interested in, especially here in Northeast Indiana.
Yeah. I think that I really hope he focuses on economic issues and where we agree, where we can work together to move Indiana forward. I think we've seen so far him slide into some social issues, which are only designed to divide us. And so I really hope he gets back on track, gets us out of his system, and we can focus on things that Hoosiers actually care about.
Been joined this evening by State Senator Travis Holdman, also State Representative Kyle Miller, and we thank you both very much for being a part of a very fast hour. And join us, we will talk about and review the State of the State address with House Floor Leader Matt Lehman and also Democratic Leader Phil Giaquinta. That's next week, 7:30 here on Primetime. For all of us with the show, I'm Bruce Haines. Take care, and we'll see you again next week. Good night. The preceding program on PBS Fort Wayne was made possible in part by
the Kendallville Area Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, presents the National Civics Bee local competition. Essays are due February 4th, and the top 20 competition is March 13th. Details at kendallvillechamber.com. The Rogers Company has been conducting business in Northeast Indiana since 1944 as Rogers Markets and now as the Rogers Company with commercial property and real estate development. Pleased to support local not-for-profits and PBS Fort Wayne. The Regional Chamber of Northeast Indiana advocates for world-class infrastructure, a competitive business climate, 21st century talent, and rural investment. One region, one voice. NEINadvocates.com.